I don't want to mislead anybody. The circuits are nothing special, right? They're very simple. There's no closed loops, okay? There's no closed motor loop. There's no magnetic gaps to adjust. There's nothing, okay? There's basically this one little circuit that fires itself through a magneto action, and you capture that electrostatic moment, you transform that, and you send it to the secondary battery. So you got two ways to do this. You can build it up in a capacitor, catch it, discharge it into the battery, and then you want to repeat this process over and over and over. But what you really want to do is you want to go as fast as you can without a capacitor, for the simple fact is you want to put a lot of this radiant energy to the source. And then you want that battery, which is the secondary source, to translate that for real usable energy, which runs your lights, runs your motors, runs your inverter, allows you to use the tools we have today. So whether you're going to capture this from this one little circuit, or you're going to do it like Moray did it, or Skilling did it, or Gray did it, however you want to think of how you're going to get it. Whether you're going to string up a long wire antenna and get it, it's there for the taking. Just requires the correct triggering. The machines that you've taped are prototype experimental machines to capture the radiant energy, to find out exactly what it is, how it works, what we can do with it, what we can't do with it, how much mechanical power we can get out of it without inputting more energy into the machine. And we have to state for the record that it's nothing that's new. It's not anything with this mystical halo around it, right? It's not that at all. It's always existed here. It's going to be here forever. But with radiant energy, we don't have any instruments. We can see it. We know it's there. It shocks us. It does little things like that. It lights neon bulbs between the earth and plastic. Yeah, it's very, very obvious that there's some form of energy there from the vacuum, right? That we really don't have instruments to measure, and the only thing that we do have to measure it is this gas indicator that glows. So we know that in a way it's fluid. It's like a gas. And so what we need is something to convert the gas to electrical energy. And we're not talking about a fuel cell here. The battery is the only thing that I've found after 40 years of research that can convert any of this radiant energy for usable power. We had a little trigger signal from this battery over here, and that starts the motor, which we're going to do right now. And if you come around to this side over here, you can see over here, we'll slow it down a little bit. Over here, it's magnetically triggered on this side. Come over here. So each time one of these things goes around here, it puts a little trigger signal into these coils. And once we get the trigger signal in there, then what we can do is we can, each time this triggers, turns on and turns off, we can collect the charges that would normally be wasted. And of course they go into these banks over here, these capacitor banks, and then this is a timing mechanism here, which it's timed to be about once every second and a half or so, and makes contact here after we collect the charges. And then these capacitors here are dumped through this electronic switch here, and you can actually see the dump here. You watch it and it'll bounce up when it dumps. So if we slow it down a little bit so you can see it. See, it's bouncing around here. Each time that dumps down, the capacitor bank discharges into this battery. So this battery is going up, and this is basically a 12-watt motor. So it's got a little bit of torque to it here. And basically this is what led us to do the bigger motors and how to collect the charges so that we can recharge the batteries on our other motors. And so then if we look at the principle of the way this one works with charge, discharge, charge, discharge, charge, discharge, we can take it up in models. We can move this up to a much more complex machine. Once you understand the principle of the machine, of how it operates, then you can move to a bigger model, which makes this principle go faster and faster and faster. So now the energy is recoverable real fast. In other words, we want to recover this energy as quickly as possible to the battery. The energy from the vacuum is triggered by the radiant. You see what I'm saying? In other words, when you hit that battery with a radiant energy, the battery takes the energy from the vacuum in the chemical process and converts it to something that's usable at a later time. In other words, it's a triggering mechanism. You have to trigger your circuits to produce a radiant spike, and then the radiant spike, when it hits the chemical action, sucks the energy from the vacuum. You know, the term free energy is probably the most misused term in the world. The term that I would use is free radiant energy. You see, you want to make up the radiant energy, and you want to do it for the least amount of power input. So what you want to do is have the circuits translate the normal power into a radiant energy. Then you want to capture the radiant energy. Once you capture the radiant energy, you transform that back to something that's usable for the battery, see, which is a radiant DC. And the battery then after that just charges like mad. So it's all translations. So now we're going to expand on this thing. So here's the battery. Listen very closely here. That's the oscillators running in the machine. You see it wiggle? Now watch. That's because there's no output hooked up on it. So now what we want to do is we want to take this dead battery and we'll get this thing to go here. See that it changed in tone? Now we're going to tell it to go. And we're going to watch over here. This was a completely dead battery, and you're going to see what's coming over here because now we have told it to charge the hell out of it, see? So see, it's up to 24 volts already. So this was a dead battery, so what we've done is we've increased these pulses now 8 times the amount. So what this battery's doing is charging itself up, and you can see that on the meter there. And so now as this battery starts to charge itself from a dead state, the impedance in the battery will drop down, and you'll get current in this battery. You'll be able to light a light here in a second. By the way, there is no RF used in this machine, but I want to show you that the energy in the primary battery is definitely there. And so if we were to just stop this for a second, we don't want to get our hands in there, and we put these lights in series, you don't see, remember we put this in series, so that the energy has to flow through these lights to the battery. So now, if we look at the battery, see the same voltages there. So that means that the energy, and if you look at the lights very closely, as the battery changes impedance, the lights are starting to light. See, now let me take one of these off so we'll get it down to a level where you can see this, just by disconnecting one bunch. See? Now this is over the top, this is 8 volts over the top of the battery. Okay, so you see, as this battery lowers its impedance, these lights will get brighter. Okay?
What's causing the impedance to be lower?
The energy that comes from the machine is trying to charge this dead battery, which is driving the sulfation off the plates. So now you're starting to return to a normal battery, see? So after charging this battery, okay, in the short time that we did, we should have some indication right now of current in this battery, and we do. The battery now has energy in it. See? Now if you notice one thing, we didn't have this running all that long on the battery, and the battery now is saying, wait a minute, where did I get this energy? This is a dead battery. Okay, so let's let it run a little bit longer. We expanded the machine, so we made it on a 2-tier level. We wanted to see what if the small wheel was exactly like the big wheel, and it's identical in output. We wanted to make sure that the problem wouldn't be in geometry in the end. Okay, so we built the big one first, ran it, tested it, just like we're doing right now. If you look here of what's coming to that battery, see the pulses? They're faster and faster and faster as the machine goes. Pretty soon it's steady. See? That's the energy that's going, that is the spiked energy, or the radiant energy that's hitting the battery. And the battery, being that it's a chemical reaction, can translate that into energy. See, it doesn't make any difference if the battery's been sitting 2 years or 5 years, or what the sulfation is on the battery. This energy doesn't care, it just breaks it off. After a radiant charger charges batteries, it's a little more difficult to charge with a conventional charger. It takes a longer time after that. So there is an alteration that takes place from using this form of energy that takes place in the chemical composition of the cells. You know, and once it's attuned to this way of charging, the battery accepts the radiant charger much faster each time, higher power density output each time. So a 33 amp hour battery might look like a 65 amp hour battery. The difference is radiant's one form of energy, EM as we use today, electromotive force energy, isn't capable of charging this sulfated battery because it sees nothing. It sees an infinite resistance. Okay? Radiant energy doesn't, being that the energy is like 100 times or 200 times what the sulfation process is. Here, you can look at it again. Now it's brighter. See? And it'll keep doing that. The sulfation will come right off the plates, and the battery will become a pretty good battery again. This is a monopole motor, okay? This is a monopole motor, and this is in our US patent, and you can find that on my internet site. And this motor over here is what we termed as the motor generator. Quote, that's what the patent office, and the patent examiner and everybody decided it's a motor generator. So, but this showed us the original process to get to this motor. This is an advancement in what the energy is. And what we found out is when we apply conventional electronics to it, you don't get the same radiant output. So we have to go unconventional with this being, and that's why we call this the monopole. because you see that it's all the same magnetic forces all around the wheel. It's all north poles. And each one of these is on its own independent circuit. And then they're all collected in the end and sent to the battery continuously. So there's no need to do any capacitor. Here's the example. If you just put this battery to another 12-volt battery, you can only divide the charge between the two batteries. So therefore, you have two lower batteries. But in this thing's case, this 12 volts right here is only to trigger this. What comes out of here is the radiant spike, which is about 4 or 5 times over this battery. See, because now this battery, in other words, that's charging it with no current, basically. And you can see the battery has charge in it because it's barely flickering. So even if we stop the motor, see, the battery's going to go down to its original voltage. If we start the motor, you can see the pulsing process starts and the lights start to grow brighter. So where is this energy, right? Where's this energy coming from? Well, it's coming from the collapsing magnetic fields, right? Which produce a radiant spike. And see, most engineers would take this circuit and short that out because it's not necessary. So they throw away the radiant. That way, if they throw away the radiant energy and don't capture that radiant energy, what happens to this battery is it just gets depleted. This is your typical monopole motor, okay? You only see one pole here. You see, you don't see a north and south push-pull motor. You see a motor that's totally in attraction here, that's a magneto. So what we have here is a magneto radiant generator, basically. We come in with this magnet, we charge the iron. When the magnet moves away, that discharges, fires the transistor. The transistor then fires the coil. The coil then does a flip-flop, generates a radiant spike, and the diodes collect it. And then it's sent to the battery. The monopole motor self-regulates to the load. It automatically servos itself to the load.
If you were to measure the transient voltage of the spikes,
200, 300, 400 volts. It's all a trigger process of sucking it completely out of the vacuum. Electronics, they short that out. Well, they have to filter it out or the devices burn out. We don't want to produce any gas in the battery because then you heat it. What destroys this battery is heat. Pushing a lot of current to it for a short period of time, trying to get the charge there. This process is natural, like nature. Nature takes a certain amount of time to charge its battery. See, you can't cause nature to move faster than what she wants to do. In other words, when you push a lot of current to a battery, you're forcing a chemical process which nature says, I really need this much time. You follow me? So she's going to buck you and she's going to fight you. And she's going to cause heating and gassing and bubbling and loss of electrolyte, which is just killing the battery. You know, where a radiant charger comes in, nothing boils, no gassing, coolness in the battery, and this charger is just going to charge on nature's curve. So as long as you follow those rules, the battery will charge, and the primary battery, you can reverse this process over and over. You can do this with dry cells, you can do this with gel cells, you can do this with, these happen to be gel cells, could be plugged into the wall and burn 1/3 less. This could be running on a solar panel right now in the sun and performing this process. You see, that way the solar panel doesn't have to boil the battery. You could design it so that it could switch its own batteries and run it until the bearings wear out. This is where the term perpetual motion is not true. See, because something's always going to break. Yeah, so you can't call it perpetual motion. Tesla is absolutely right on the button. You know, Tesla is one that, of course, at that time probably started inventing these strange terms. You know, inventing some term like radiant energy. Okay, what is that, guys? Well, see, Tesla discovers this because the people that were running the DC generators at the powerhouses, threw the switch, the wire glowed, killing the operator, and as soon as the current caught up, the glow went away. That's the energy that we want to capture. That's the radiant energy when the wire glows and then collapses back. Those generators were probably at 20,000 volts. So when they threw the knife switch, now just think of this for a second. There's this big inductance. There's this wire that goes down to the end. You throw the switch at the powerhouse, the voltage is already there. That's the dipole. Well, before the current can get down the wire, this wire is emitting great big gigantic lightning bolts that killed the operators. So they had to damp this out some way. So what I've just told you about the radiant energy is exactly what our engineers do. They kill the dipole. They short out the radiant and just use the current. And of course they measure the power then in watts. I'm the opposite. I say, let's find out where the source came from, how it got there. Let's learn what nature's process is right here, because nature will give you all the watts you want if you transform it. He was studying the gas, the etheric gas, because he said it was a gas. Yes, he knew. He knew because he was a great studier of the experiment. You see, do we really do the experiments today? No. We just build what they tell us to build. We don't do any more experiments. You know, we don't learn from our experiments. We don't learn from the observation. You know, it's already in the book. It's been done. Don't waste your time. Here it is. These are the formulas. Learn them and you'll pass. So what do we do with a skeptic? You present a challenge to the skeptic. You get on there and you invite the skeptic. And you say, look, you come and do this for yourself. They won't. They refuse, you know, and even if they did come and do it, they would still deny it. In the end, they would say, nope, I didn't see that. That really didn't happen. That doesn't work that way. See, it's all programming. You see, and it's also difficulty for the skeptic or the skeptical engineer to design a circuit using radiant energy. They haven't been trained in doing it. And they don't get it. They don't understand it. They refuse to look at it. They're blind. So, if the little kids are taught right from the beginning that this is the way you make this machine, and this is why it works this way, and see, you don't need to do this, and you don't need to do that, and you don't have to have any of these things. And see, you still have mechanical energy, and look, you're doing this for milliamps instead of amps. You know, batteries, right, are going to want to run on nature's timescale. Follow me? Nature's timescale says that the battery has a certain rate of discharge for so many hours. You want to stay within that range. You see, otherwise you're harming the battery. The chemical process is causing heat. Cause heat, that's energy that you can measure that's wasted. You follow me? So, when you present a skeptic this, and you say, look, I'm willing to take your challenge.
I summarize this as the 1 watt challenge, which is, I think, that what it's going to take to move forward for any of us is to have the demonstration device on a standalone self-powered basis continuously generates at least 1 watt excess average output power.
I'll take your 1 watt challenge, but these are the rules. I can run an open loop system. I'm not going to couple it back. In the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand you this item and say, tell me how many amp hours you got out of it now from what you put in. Very simple procedure. It's the same thing as a 1 watt challenge. So we're looking at it this way. If I let the skeptic build a circuit, which he says charges the battery, and of course under conventional means, because they're not going to vary, from the textbook operation of this. They're going to boil the battery, they're going to apply huge amounts of current to the battery. I'm not going to do that. The point is, the skeptics are here to keep you burning the energy so that you have to pay for that energy. The thing is that radiant energy is so simple, it surrounds everything that we do. The plants use it all day long, the trees use it all day long, the earth uses it all day long. I mean, the earth communicates with the earth. There's currents running through the earth. You see, it's just a matter of tapping it to get what you want, and then not killing the dipole. In other words, we don't want to kill the dipole. We don't want the plus and minus to go away. We want this energy to keep flowing. We just want to tap a little bit out of it. We want to use that little bit that we tapped to charge something so that we can run our conventional stuff, which the skeptics have designed, because that's what we have.
I think that eventually we'll be able to power the world with negative energy very cheaply and very cleanly. But it is different to use. Your mind has to think backwards on a lot of things that we were all taught in electronics or in our electrical circuits and in power systems and so forth. Now, the amazing thing about negative energy is one day, today, all of our loads, our motors and things like that, are all designed for positive energy and they're designed for system losses. One day in the future, when we are using and able to use negative energy, we will use loads that are specifically designed for negative energy, and they will just be another amplifier gain. Maybe the load itself will increase the gain 100 times what you're putting into it and you're paying for on the front end. And if you need not to pay that much, you put a few impedance sections before you get to it. What we're saying is, I'm not saying it can be done right now. I'm saying that just if we considered we could develop this very adequately as we went over a period of time, in the future, we'll be able to take a flashlight battery and power New York City, at least in theory. In the real world, maybe we could take that flashlight battery and power one home. Let's look at something a little more realistic. Well, that would be a marvelous thing, because think of how much coal and oil and all that you would save. So as far as the biosphere is concerned, you could really clean up the biosphere. As far as the economics, all modern economics is based on cheap energy, and we would hope cheap, clean energy. It'll deliver you the cheap, clean energy to have a much higher economy for everybody.
It's our point in the future to not consume. We don't want to consume anything. We want to be able to use the energy but not consume it. You know, and it's not as if we're poking a straw in something and letting the air out of a balloon. So we're not going to shrink the Earth, if that's what everybody's thinking. You know, we're not going to tap something or cause harm, you know, that could backfire on us someday. You see, but the other alternative is let's just continue to do what we're doing. And I guess we all shall find out pretty quickly that we've consumed it all up, you know, when we could have used it. But I have faith. I have faith that maybe the new electrical engineers might have to look at something different, you know, because radiant isn't the same thing. You can charge batteries with it, you can heal with it, you can transmit with it, you can have communications with it. If we could get through the political end, you know, all the politics being played and all the little whitewash games and this game and that game and, you know, the status quo. Yeah, the stuff that if we can get through this, then I think we maybe might have a really bright future.